She grabbed my arm at the door that morning. Not violently, but with a desperation that stopped me cold. Her fingers tightened like she was afraid I might disappear if she let go. I remember the look on her face more than the words, eyes wide, unfocused, carrying a kind of fear I'd never seen before. Then she said it, barely above a whisper, like the walls were listening. "Please, don't take your usual route to work today." I laughed at first because it sounded ridiculous. Same house, same job, same drive I'd taken for years without a second thought. I asked her why, expecting a simple explanation, maybe traffic or an accident she'd heard about. But she shook her head immediately. No reasons, no logic, just urgency. "Just trust me," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "Take the long way, today." That's when something shifted inside me. Not fear, confusion. The kind that makes your stomach tighten even though nothing bad has technically happened yet. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She kept glancing toward the window, then back at me like she was counting seconds. I stood there with my keys in my hand, feeling like I'd walked into the middle of a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. This was my wife, the person who knew my routines, my coffee order, the way I slept, and yet, in that moment, she felt like a stranger asking for blind faith. I should have pushed harder. I should have asked more questions, but habit is a powerful thing. So is trust. I nodded, kissed her on the forehead, and told her I'd take the other route. As I opened the door, I glanced back once more. She exhaled in visible relief, her shoulders dropping like she'd just avoided something terrible. I remember thinking how strange it was, how her relief didn't make me feel safer at all. The moment I pulled out of the driveway, that relief I'd seen on her face followed me like a shadow. I told myself I was overthinking it, that couples have weird mornings sometimes, that stress makes people act strangely. Still, I missed the first turn on purpose, just to see how it felt to disobey her warning. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, waiting for something. Nothing happened. The alternate route was longer, quieter, different houses, different stoplights, different rhythm. I felt like I was trespassing in my own day. Every few minutes, her voice replayed in my head, "Just trust me." And the more I heard it, the less comforting it sounded. Trust usually comes with reasons. This came with urgency and silence. At a red light, I checked my phone. No messages, no follow-up. That bothered me more than if she'd texted 10 times. If she'd been worried about my safety, wouldn't she check in? Wouldn't she ask if I made it past whatever danger she was so desperate to avoid? The light turned green, and I kept driving, watching familiar time markers slip by. The coffee shop I usually passed, the gas station where I sometimes stopped. It felt like skipping pages in a book and realizing the story still made sense, but differently. By the time I reached the office parking lot, the uneasiness hadn't faded. It had settled, like something unfinished. I sat there for a moment with the engine running, staring at the windshield, trying to convince myself that nothing was wrong, that this was just a strange morning I'd forget by lunchtime. But as I shut off the car, one thought kept circling back, quiet but persistent. Whatever she was afraid of, it wasn't following me anymore. Work was supposed to pull me back into normalcy. Emails, meetings, half-listened conversations by the coffee machine, things that usually pushed everything else to the background. But that day, normal refused to stick. I caught myself staring at my screen, rereading the same sentence over and over, my mind drifting back to her face at the door. Around mid-morning, my phone buzzed. My chest tightened instinctively, but it was just a work notification. No message from her. No "did you get there safe?" No casual check-in. The absence felt deliberate, and that thought sat heavier than any accusation could have. I tried to focus, but every small detail started to feel suspicious in hindsight.
her sudden urgency, the way she'd grabbed my arm, the relief when I agreed. None of it lined up with concern. It lined up with timing, with control. By noon, I found myself looking at the clock more than my work. I kept expecting the day to reveal its reason, like a delayed punchline, an accident report on the news, a traffic alert, anything that justified the detour. Nothing came.
During lunch, I drove past my usual route out of curiosity. Same traffic, same routine, people moving through their day like always. No sign of danger, no reason I shouldn't have been there that morning. That's when the first real crack formed. If there was nothing wrong with the road, then the warning wasn't about the road at all. I went back to work with a quiet knot in my chest, realizing the question wasn't what she'd saved me from, it was who. I didn't confront her that night. I don't know why, maybe because some part of me wasn't ready to hear the answer out loud. When I got home, she was already there, moving through the kitchen with an energy that felt rehearsed. She smiled too quickly, kissed me too casually, and asked about my day before I'd even set my bag down. "How's work?" she asked, watching my face a little too closely. "Same as always," I said, and that was true. What wasn't true was the way my mind kept drifting, measuring her tone, her timing, the space between her words. She nodded, relieved, like she just checked off a box. Dinner tasted fine, but the conversation felt hollow. She talked more than usual, filling the air with harmless stories, laughing a little louder than necessary. I realized she was trying to outrun silence. Silence has a way of catching things people don't want to explain. At one point, her phone buzzed on the counter. She reached for it instantly, almost knocking over her glass in the process. She laughed it off, but her hand didn't stop shaking until she left the room to take a call. I sat there alone, staring at the doorway she'd disappeared through, replaying the morning again. The urgency, the relief, the detour, and suddenly it all aligned in a way I didn't want it to. Later, when she came back, she curled up next to me on the couch, resting her head on my shoulder like she always did. I let her, but something inside me stayed alert, listening to her breathing, noticing how she kept checking the time. That night, lying in bed beside her, I understood something quietly devastating. Whatever she'd done that morning, it had worked. I waited until the sound of the shower filled the bathroom before I moved. Not out of suspicion at first, but instinct, like my body had already decided there was something I needed to see, even if my mind wasn't ready yet. Her phone was on the nightstand, face down, exactly where she always left it. It buzzed once, then again. Short vibrations, spaced just enough to feel intentional. I stared at it longer than I should have. This wasn't me. I'd never been the kind of person to check, to doubt, to cross that invisible line. Trust had always felt simpler than suspicion, but that morning had cracked something open, and now I couldn't pretend it hadn't. When I finally picked it up, my hands were steady in a way that surprised me. No frantic scrolling, no panic, just a slow swipe, like I already knew where this was going. The screen lit up with a name I recognized, but not in the way I should have. Someone she'd mentioned before, casually, briefly, someone who wasn't supposed to matter. The messages weren't dramatic, no declarations, no explicit confessions. That's what made them worse. They were familiar, comfortable, full of timing references and inside jokes that didn't belong to me. And there it was, buried a few lines up, the reason for the detour. Good thing you warned him. That was close. My chest tightened, but I didn't stop reading. I couldn't, because suddenly the morning made sense in a way I wished it hadn't. The route, the urgency, the relief. She hadn't been protecting me from danger. She'd been protecting a secret from me. The shower turned off. I locked the phone and placed it back exactly where it had been.
By the time she walked into the bedroom, wrapped in a towel, my face was calm, too calm. She smiled at me, unaware that the version of me she'd woken up with no longer existed. As she climbed into bed, I stared at the ceiling, feeling something heavy settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet, just the quiet understanding that my life had shifted while I was busy taking the long way to work. The next few days moved strangely, like time had slowed down just enough for me to notice everything I'd ignored before. I didn't change my behavior. I laughed when she laughed. I answered when she asked. On the surface, I was the same husband I'd always been. Inside, I was paying attention for the first time.
I noticed how she started reminding me about the route again, always framed as concern. "Traffic's been bad lately," she'd say. Each time her eyes searched my face for confirmation, for obedience. At each time, I agreed, not because I believed her, but because I wanted to see how far the lie went. The messages kept coming, not constantly, carefully, always when I was supposed to be busy, always during the windows she thought she controlled. I didn't read every one, only enough to understand the pattern, enough to know this wasn't impulsive, it was planned, managed, maintained. What surprised me most was how ordinary everything still looked. We ate dinner together. We talked about weekend plans. We shared a bed. Betrayal, I learned, doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it blends in so well that you only notice it once you stop trusting the scenery. At work, I caught myself zoning out, not from heartbreak, but calculation. I wasn't thinking about confronting her. I was thinking about timing, about what she believed I knew. One evening, she mentioned his name casually. My lack of reaction made her relax instantly. That's when I understood something important. She thought the danger had passed, and once someone believes they've won, they stop being careful. I started taking my usual route again without telling her. Not every day, just enough to reclaim it as mine. I didn't announce it. I didn't ask permission. I watched closely for her reaction when I mentioned passing certain places, certain times. Each detail landed exactly where I expected it to. And each time, she adjusted her story just a little too late. I began collecting clarity instead of proof. Proof is loud. Clarity is quiet. I paid attention to schedules, to patterns, to the way she suddenly had reasons to be busy when I wasn't supposed to be home yet. The more space I gave her, the more confidently she filled it with lies she thought were safe. What hurt most wasn't the other person. It was how easily she'd decided I didn't deserve the truth. How quickly love had been replaced with logistics. I felt something in me harden, not into anger, but resolve. One afternoon, I came home early without warning. Not to catch her, not to expose anything, just to see. The house was empty. Too empty. Her car was gone. No message, no explanation. I sat on the couch, calm in a way that surprised me, and finally accepted what I'd been avoiding. That night, when she returned, she talked faster than usual, filling the air with unnecessary details. I nodded, listened, and said nothing. Silence has weight when someone knows it doesn't belong. Over the next week, I put my life back in my hands. I spoke to a lawyer quietly. I moved important things slowly. I stopped sharing pieces of myself she no longer had the right to hold. Through it all, she stayed comfortable. Confident the detour had worked. When I finally told her I knew, it wasn't during a fight. It was over coffee on a quiet morning. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I simply laid the truth between us and watched the color drain from her face as she realized the route she'd chosen had only delayed the inevitable. I stood up, wished her well, and walked out. No shouting, no revenge speeches, just absence. Weeks later, driving freely again, I felt something settle into place. She'd tried to protect herself by redirecting me away from the truth. Instead, she'd taught me something I'll never forget. If someone needs to control your path to keep their secret alive, they were never walking beside you in the first place. Months passed, and life didn't dramatically improve overnight. It just got quieter in a way that felt honest. I moved into a smaller place closer to work, took the same route every morning, and noticed how different the road felt when no one was trying to steer me away from it. There was relief in that simplicity. No guessing, no second meanings. We didn't stay in touch. There was nothing left to say that silence hadn't already handled better. Occasionally, I'd catch myself reaching for my phone out of habit, then stop. Not out of anger, out of acceptance. Some chapters end without closure, because closure is realizing you survived the truth. One evening, stuck at a familiar red light on my usual drive home, I thought about that morning again. The urgency, the fear in her voice, the way I'd mistaken control for concern. It struck me how close I'd been to never questioning it at all, to living a carefully rerouted life designed by someone else's secrets. I understood then that the warning hadn't saved me. It had pushed me toward a reckoning I didn't know I needed. If I hadn't felt that confusion, that quiet unease, I might still be trusting a version of love that required blindness. Now, when I drive, I don't rush. I let the road unfold the way it's meant to, and every time I pass the turn she once begged me to avoid, I feel something steady instead of bitter. Not revenge, not regret, just the calm certainty that I chose truth over comfort and never took the long way again. Sometimes people ask if I regret trusting her that morning, if I wish I'd taken my usual route and forced the truth to surface sooner. I always give the same answer: no, because trust wasn't my mistake. Misusing it was hers. What I learned stays with me now, quietly shaping how I move through the world. Real care doesn't need detours. Real love doesn't panic when you show up where you belong. And anyone who needs to redirect your life to protect their lie has already chosen a path without you. That morning didn't ruin me. It clarified me. And in the end, that clarity was the thing that saved me. Not from an accident, not from a moment, but from a future built on someone else's secrets. I still think about how easily that day could have blended into every other day. How close I was to accepting the detour as love, the silence as normal, the unease as my own imagination. Most people don't lose their trust all at once. It slips away quietly when you stop listening to your instincts. Now, when something feels off, I don't ignore it. I don't rush past it just to keep the peace, because peace that depends on ignorance isn't peace at all. The truth has a way of waiting patiently. You can delay it. You can reroute around it, but sooner or later, it shows up exactly where you are. And when it does, the only real choice is whether you keep driving forward or let someone else decide where your road ends. Every once in a while, I pass someone stopped at the side of the road, phone in hand, looking unsure which way to go. It always makes me slow down a little, not to warn them, just to remember how subtle turning points really are. That morning taught me that listening isn't just about hearing words. It's about noticing what's missing. I didn't lose my marriage because I trusted someone. I gained my future because I finally trusted myself. And that's the part of the story that still matters, long after the road has gone quiet. If there's one thing I carry forward, it's this. Pay attention when someone asks you to change your path without giving you the truth. Love doesn't need shortcuts, and the right people don't fear where you're headed.